I knew something was off the moment Todd winked at me like he was doing me a damn favor. He slid the envelope across the table like it was a golden ticket, leaned back in his fake leather chair, and said, "Swear to God, we're saving you from taxes." 9 years. 9 long-ass years of hauling this place through supply chain hell, surviving 3 mergers, 2 system overhauls, and 1 full-blown warehouse flood. And now, this clown hands me a 1099 like I'm his gig worker? My throat went dry before I even opened the envelope. I stared at the return address like it might bite. HR had bundled it with my year-end packet, benefits summary, PTO balance, the usual boilerplate, and tucked in like a little time bomb was this damn form. Not a W-2, not my regular earned W-2, but a bright, glaring 1099. My hands actually shook when I unfolded it. No explanation, no warning, nothing. Just a quiet demotion in disguise. I looked up at Todd, who was already nose deep in his protein shake and some stupid spreadsheet he probably didn't even understand. "Is this a mistake?" I asked, calm as I could manage. He smirked. "Nope, it's a strategic shift. More flexible, more efficient. You're still part of the family." His eyes didn't even meet mine when he said it. "Besides," he added, "you'll make more now. Think of the write-offs." Like I give a rat's ass about write-offs when I've just been stripped of my health insurance, 401k, and any legal protection if something goes sideways. I didn't even argue. Not there. Not then. You learn in logistics that yelling doesn't fix the jam. It just makes the truck late. So I nodded, smiled, took the packet, walked out of that office like it wasn't burning behind me, and hey, if you've ever been blindsided like that, do me a favor. Tap that subscribe button and throw a like on this video. It helps more than you think. Keeps the team pushing out stories like these, where the little guy or gal gets their voice back. Now back to Todd, that smug bastard. The worst part wasn't the form, it was the joke. "We're saving you from taxes." Like I should thank him for legally reclassifying me without notice, discussion, or a single change in my damn job. I still worked the same hours, still reported to the same supervisor, still logged in from the same company laptop, used the same punch clock. Nothing had changed, except now they didn't owe me protections, benefits, shit, even overtime. I went home that night and sat in my car for 15 full minutes before I even got out. Just stared at the steering wheel, thought about all the birthdays I'd missed, all the weekends I'd given up when warehouse inventory went sideways, all the times I'd been the reliable one. And for what? A tax form that tells me I'm disposable, replaceable, technically not even their employee anymore? I made a drink, pulled up the IRS website, searched difference between W-2 and 1099. That rabbit hole got deep real quick. Turns out there's a whole damn checklist. Behavioral control, financial control, relationship of the parties. According to every line I read, I wasn't a contractor. I was a damn employee. Plain and simple. No contractor gets told when to show up, what uniform to wear, which system to use, what script to read to clients, and then gets paid on a strict payroll schedule. But I did. Every week, like clockwork. I wasn't running my own business, I was running theirs, so I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I printed Todd's email, the one with the saving you from taxes line, folded it neatly, scanned a copy, emailed it to myself, and then, just to be safe, uploaded it to my personal Google Drive. Redundancy is key in logistics. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew one thing. This wasn't just a clerical error. It was a setup, a trap. And if Todd thought I was going to roll over and let him bulldoze 9 years of my life with one smug grin and a tax dodge, he didn't know me half as well as he thought. He called it a cost-saving measure. I was starting to wonder, cost-saving for who? I stayed up until 2 a.m. the night I got that 1099. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, just me, an overworked Dell laptop, and a spiral notebook slowly filling with terms I never thought I'd have to learn. Behavioral control, financial dependence, degree of independence. I wasn't reading IRS guidelines. I was reading a checklist of every reason I'd just gotten screwed without lube. I wasn't an independent contractor, not by any legal stretch, but apparently that didn't matter to Norbridge Freight or to Todd. No one ever handed me a contractor agreement. Not once in 9 years. I didn't invoice for my hours. I clocked in. I didn't set my own schedule. I was assigned one. Every morning, I'd roll into the same office, use the same login, wear the same steel-toe boots they required, and sit through the same mandatory safety briefings. I wasn't independent. I was deeply embedded in their ecosystem. Every spreadsheet, every process, every broken label printer in receiving had my fingerprints on it. And now, overnight, they wanted to pretend I was a freelancer, that I was running my own little business, that I wasn't their problem if I got hurt on site or needed medical leave. What really made my stomach turn was what I found about self-employment tax. I always assumed taxes were just handled. But now I was reading horror stories on forums from people who'd been hit with back taxes, interest, penalties, all because their employer pulled the same stunt. And because I was issued a 1099 for the entire year, I was now the one liable for the full share. Social Security, Medicare, everything. Thousands of dollars. Gone. Because Todd wanted to streamline operations. That's when the betrayal hit full tilt. Not just that I'd been reclassified, not just that they hadn't told me, but that they'd made me financially responsible for their fraud. And they had the balls to call it a favor. I emailed Todd. Tried to keep it civil. Asked for clarification. Was this a permanent change? Was there documentation I should review? Had my role officially been converted to contractor status, and if so, under what conditions? He replied less than 5 minutes later. Short and smug. No greeting, no explanation. Just, relax. We've done this before. You're still part of the family. It's just better this way. I stared at that line. Part of the family. And laughed so hard I almost choked on my coffee. What kind of family kicks you in the ribs and hands you the medical bill? What kind of family strips your legal protections while pretending they're doing you a favor? I read the email again. Then again. I could almost hear his voice in the text. Slick, dismissive, smug like a used car salesman who just swapped your engine for a hamster wheel. And then, without even really deciding to, I hit forward. First, to my personal inbox, just to have it saved. Then, to a folder I labeled tax nonsense. And finally, with my heart pounding and my stomach flipping like it was trying to escape my body, I opened the state labor website. I didn't write a long explanation, just uploaded the email and filled out the boxes that asked, was there a formal contractor agreement? No. Did you work set hours under supervision? Yes. Were you provided equipment? Yes. Did you invoice for your services? No. Did you receive benefits or expect them? Yes. Do you believe you were misclassified? Oh, hell yes. When I clicked submit, I expected a confirmation email. Instead, it just blinked back a generic thank you message. Your submission has been received. You may be contacted by an investigator. And that was it. No sirens, no knock at the door, just silence. I sat there for 10 minutes, staring at that screen. Did I just make a mistake? Did I just nuke my own future out of some misguided sense of justice? But then I opened Todd's email one more time, read that line again. Part of the family. And I thought, if this is family, then someone better call child services. Filing the report felt like ordering takeout. Click, scroll, attach, done. No courtroom drama, no blinking red light or dramatic gavel slamming down. Just a government website that looked like it hadn't been updated since dial-up internet. There was no bold heading that said, "We got you." No human touch, just boxes. Cold, bureaucratic boxes. Do you believe you were misclassified as an independent contractor? Yes. Were you subject to control over your schedule, tools, and work process? Yes. Were you offered a formal contractor agreement? No. Attach any supporting documentation. I uploaded Todd's email, the one with the line about saving you from taxes. I almost added a snarky comment, but held back. No jokes, no emotion, just evidence. And then I hit submit. The confirmation screen was insultingly bland. Thank you. Your submission has been received. You may be contacted. That was it. No tracking number, no email receipt, just a void. I sat back, exhaled through my nose, and stared at the screen like maybe it would change its mind and start flashing "case opened" in big, bold letters. But it didn't. It just sat there. Passive. Unconcerned. It felt anticlimactic, like calling 911 and getting a voicemail. I expected something to happen, for my heart rate to drop. for the anger to leave my body. It didn't. I was still vibrating, part nerves, part regret. What had I just done? Did I just torch my career over a tax form? I got up and poured myself a drink I didn't even want. Just needed something to do with my hands. I kept glancing at my phone like maybe Todd would somehow know what I did and start texting threats. But it stayed silent. The world didn't explode. The sky didn't crack open. Nothing burned. Just me, sitting in the dim yellow light of my kitchen, wondering if I'd just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. For a moment, I actually considered logging back in and seeing if I could retract the complaint, but I didn't. Instead, I clicked into my email and created a folder called Paper Trail. I dragged in every digital crumb I could think of: schedules, memos, screenshots of the system dashboard showing my login hours, PDFs of my old W-2s, everything that proved I hadn't changed a damn thing in how I worked. Only the company had. Quietly, without warning. I remembered one night, years ago, when I stayed behind to clean up a supply chain mess that wasn't even mine. A third-party vendor botched a shipment, and I stayed until 2 a.m. rerouting orders so the next day's deliveries wouldn't be a bloodbath. Todd sent me a $25 Starbucks card as a thank you. That was the culture. Be a team player. Go the extra mile. We take care of our own. And now? Now I was just a line item, a technicality, a liability dressed up as flexibility. Still, I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. I wasn't even angry anymore, just hollow, like the punchline landed but nobody laughed. Maybe they'd fix the classification. Maybe HR would apologize and claim it was a mistake. Maybe the state would call and tell me it wasn't a big deal. Hell, maybe nothing would happen at all. I told myself I wasn't expecting justice, that I just wanted clarity. But the truth? I wanted someone to say it out loud, that what they did was wrong, that I wasn't crazy, that I mattered. And somewhere deep down, I hoped they'd feel a fraction of what I felt walking out of that office with a 1099 in hand and a fake smile on my face. I closed the laptop and turned off the kitchen light. One small click, one quiet room. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something big had just started. 3 weeks passed like nothing. Business as usual on the surface, same warehouse hum, same clanking of pallet jacks, same cheap coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. But under all that noise, something subtle had shifted. First clue? Kim from payroll stopped making eye contact. The same woman who used to talk my ear off about her candle-making side hustle now avoided me like I was covered in smallpox. Then the whispers started. Not the dramatic kind, not even the malicious kind, just quiet, careful murmurs. Someone mentioned the payroll processor had reached out with a routine request for time cards. Not just mine, not just last year's, but 5 years worth. Every time someone clocked in, clocked out, called out sick, covered a holiday shift. All of it. That kind of digging didn't come from curiosity. It came from panic. HR held a mandatory meeting in the break room that Friday. Fluorescent lights buzzing like mosquitoes. Todd stood at the front with that same bullshit confidence he wore like cologne. We're undergoing a periodic review, he announced. Just a few audits to make sure our records are up to date. Nothing to worry about. Right? Because 5-year-old time cards suddenly needing review screams normal operations. The silence in that room was heavy. No one said my name. No one had to. I just sat in the corner, sipping cold coffee, pretending to flip through a delivery manifest. Inside, my heart was thumping like a bass drum. But my face? Ice. Blank. Unbothered. Like I hadn't set the whole thing in motion with one quiet click. The next clue came in the form of delayed vendor shipments. I noticed it before anyone else, mostly because I was the one smoothing it over. Carriers weren't being paid on time. Orders sat in limbo. One invoice came back stamped, hold, client under review. I'd never seen that before. I flagged it, marked it, follow-up, and said nothing. Then came the suits. Not Todd's flimsy men's warehouse specials. Real suits, crisp, quiet, unlabeled clipboards. They didn't announce themselves, didn't flash badges, just started pulling folks into side rooms for quick clarifications. Most thought it was about safety protocols. I knew better. One of the warehouse guys, Luis, came up to me after his little chat. His eyes were wide, like he'd just realized the walls were thinner than he thought. "State's asking who trained us," he said, voice low. "I told him it was you." I nodded once. That was the truth. I'd trained every single floor lead in the last 6 years. Wrote the manuals, designed the shift handoffs. Hell, I even color-coded the safety boards. You in trouble? He asked. No, I said. I don't think I am. And I wasn't. Not really. I wasn't the one cutting legal corners. I wasn't the one calling full-time staff independent to duck taxes and benefits. All I'd done was tell the truth, quietly, to the one place that actually seemed to care. But watching the unraveling start, seeing the gears slip, the panic ripple, the little cracks widen, that was a feeling I didn't expect. It wasn't joy, wasn't vengeance. It was quieter, like holding a glass of cold water in your hand after a long, dry walk through a desert you didn't know you'd been crossing. Satisfying, but sobering. I kept my head down, but my ears open. Word around the floor was that the compliance firm had pulled copies of old job listings. They were comparing posted responsibilities to contractor status. They'd found internal emails. I knew exactly what they'd find. 100 little acknowledgments that we weren't contractors. We were employees, through and through, and somewhere in that pile of evidence would be Todd's signature on every last one. I walked back to my station, flipped on my screen, and logged another shift schedule into the system. Routine, efficient, unassuming. But beneath it all, a storm was starting to form. And I had the only umbrella. Todd came barreling onto the operations floor like a man trying to outrun gravity, face beat red, neck pulsing, waving a wrinkled letter like it was on fire. The room went dead quiet. Not even the forklifts beeped. Just the echo of his shoes pounding across the concrete and the sound of 100 stomachs sinking in unison. He didn't even pretend to play it cool. He stomped into the break room and slammed the door. I watched the blinds shudder from across the floor. Legal was called in immediately. Allie from corporate and some outside guy in a suit sharp enough to slice drywall. They stayed in there for hours. The door cracked open once, and I caught a glimpse of Todd hunched forward, elbows on the table, sweat soaking through the back of his button-up like he'd just run a triathlon through a furnace. The rest of us? We kept working. Or pretended to. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone knew this wasn't about performance reviews or HR audits. This had weight. Real weight. Whatever was in that envelope had Todd rattled, and that alone was enough to get people whispering in corners and checking their LinkedIn profiles under their desks. A week passed. 7 long days of fake normal. Then Todd finally called a meeting. "Let's all gather in the break room real quick," he said over the intercom, voice straining to sound casual. The whole building dragged in like prisoners to a sentencing. He stood by the whiteboard, flanked by Allie and the suit, holding a yellow folder tight enough to snap it in two. "Don't panic," he started, which of course meant we all should. "This is just a routine check. The state's labor board is conducting some reviews. Nothing targeted, nothing personal." I stared at the folder in his hand. There it was. Official letterhead peeking out of the top. I couldn't read much, but a bolded line near the middle caught my eye. Just 3 words in quotes. "We're saving you from taxes." My chest went cold. That was it. The line. His line. The one he thought was clever. The one he'd tossed off like a joke while tossing me into a tax mess. They'd quoted it, word for word. And there it was, sitting in his trembling hands like a lit stick of dynamite with his name carved into the fuse. I didn't smile. Didn't flinch. Just let that quiet surge roll through me like a heat wave no one else could feel. They didn't know who sent it. Not yet. But that line? That was the kill shot. Not speculation, not suspicion. Proof, in his own words. Signed, dated, delivered. The room broke into scattered questions and nervous side eyes. Someone asked if we needed to provide documents. Another asked if this would delay bonuses. Todd deflected like a man drowning in his own script. Afterward, while the crowd thinned, I walked past Legal's corner office just as Allie stepped out to take a call. The folder was still on the desk. Open now. More text visible. The audit, it said, was no longer limited to current classifications. It was going retroactive. 7 years deep. Every contractor file was now under review. Pay, benefits, time cards, communications. the whole house of cards. Todd's cost-saving measure just got rebranded as systemic misclassification, fraud if they pushed hard enough. And judging by the language in that letter, the state wasn't coming for answers. They were coming for blood. I walked back to my station and booted up the logistics dashboard like nothing happened, checked off the afternoon shipments, approved a restock alert. I moved like I always did, efficient, precise, invisible. But deep down, I knew the math had changed. This wasn't just a bad joke gone too far. This was an investigation now, a ticking clock with a fuse they couldn't smother, and I was the ghost that lit it. The first sign the bleeding had started came from Rhonda, one of the night shift leads I hadn't seen in over a year. She texted me out of nowhere. "I just got a letter from the labor board. Says I'm owed $11,238 in back pay. You believe that?" Attached was a blurry photo of the envelope, her name stamped beside a return address that meant one thing. This wasn't just a probe anymore. It was a payout phase. The state wasn't speculating. They were certifying damages, calculating reparations, enforcing judgment. The company had crossed a line, and now the invoice was due. Inside Norbridge, things got weird fast. Payroll froze for 3 days due to system maintenance. That was the official line. But we all knew. They were trying to triage the financial hemorrhage. One guy in accounting swore up and down that legal had pulled $400K from reserves just to cover the first wave of compliance fees. Another said HR had been ordered to stop processing reimbursements. Even the coffee budget vanished. We went from K-cups to instant powder overnight. And then came the leaks. It started with a single forwarded email that landed on someone's desk who didn't scrub the header. An internal memo from the legal team marked "Privileged, do not distribute." Of course it got distributed, word for word. It read, "We have evidence that senior leadership was aware of classification inconsistencies. Todd's March 2020 email thread includes acknowledgement of non-compliant contractor terms. Recommend preparing defense strategy." Translated, Todd knew, and he did it anyway. By Thursday, half the building had read it. Some printed copies like they were trading baseball cards. Others just whispered around the break room, afraid their badge swipes were being tracked for disloyalty. One of the forklift drivers, Donnie, the kind of guy who used to blast Lineard Skynerd through his earbuds and didn't know what compliance meant a month ago, walked past me and muttered, "If it was you, good." He didn't smile, just said it like a prayer, kept walking. I didn't answer, didn't nod, didn't gloat. What was there to say? It wasn't personal. It was math. A long, ugly equation finally solving itself. Then the real fallout began. A lien notice appeared taped to the front security desk like some kind of execution order. Laminated. Signed. State of Ohio. Notice of tax delinquency. Asset freeze in effect. It wasn't even subtle. They wanted everyone to see it. The state wasn't asking anymore. They were taking. Vendors started pulling out next. Quietly at first, then fast. Our biggest regional carrier removed Norbridge from their preferred client list. 2 packaging suppliers paused shipments citing credit risk. I overheard a frantic call between procurement and a label vendor trying to negotiate partial terms just to keep the supply line limping forward. I sat through it all like furniture. Never acknowledged, never asked. Just kept running routing maps and updating cargo ETAs like nothing was happening around me. Inside, though, I could feel the walls contracting. This place that once ran like a second home, messy, exhausting, but familiar, was unraveling by the hour. The systems were still online, the lights still on, but the soul was bleeding out one invoice, one memo, one lawsuit at a time. And all it took to start it was one email. Not a protest, not a walkout. Just truth. Documented, filed, submitted. I didn't feel guilty, not proud either, just still, like standing on the shoulder of a collapsed bridge and watching the dust settle. I hadn't pushed, just stopped pretending the cracks weren't there. They wanted me to be a contractor. They forgot contractors aren't bound by loyalty. It was like watching a dam burst in slow motion. One day, things were leaking. The next, everything was underwater. By week 7 of the unraveling, Norbridge wasn't reviewing compliance issues. It was in full-blown collapse. They brought in a crisis attorney, some big-name fixer from a downtown firm whose retainer alone probably cost more than my annual salary. He showed up in an overpriced suit with an underfed assistant and a briefcase that looked more like a weapon than a document holder. They held the meeting in conference room C, blinds drawn, guards posted outside like it was a mob trial. I wasn't invited, obviously, but that room echoed, and people talk, and some people record. According to Luis, who had zero shame about eavesdropping with his phone mic pressed to the door, the lawyer didn't even last 10 minutes before things went sideways. He read from the official state notice like it was the Book of Revelation. Voice crisp at first, then cracking. Around paragraph 3, he hit the line and just stopped. He turned to Todd, pale, motionless, gripping the table edge, and said, almost too quiet to hear, "You just bankrupted us." The room stayed silent after that, for a long time. Later that day, I got a LinkedIn message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Brittany. She used to run onboarding before they restructured her into an exit packet. She wrote, "They're sinking. Fast. You okay?" I stared at that message for a solid minute. Was I okay? Hell if I knew. I was level, quiet. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, watching the company that took nearly a decade of my life slip into the ocean, and realizing I didn't feel the urge to throw them a rope. I typed back, "I'm fine. Finally." Because the truth hit me then, clearer than any audit report. This was never just about taxes. Not really. This was about respect, about trust. About 9 years of showing up early, staying late, fixing problems I didn't create, training people who got promoted over me, and still getting handed a 1099 like I was disposable. They hadn't just misclassified me. They'd misjudged me, thought I was quiet enough to ignore, safe enough to cheat, invisible enough to erase. That illusion shattered the moment another document surfaced, buried in the audit appendix. A 2-year-old email from Todd to a former CFO, flagged by investigators for its casual arrogance. The subject line? Loophole City. The body read, "Even if someone squeals, we'll never get caught. It's gray area. Just keep him off payroll and call it flexibility." That line was cited directly in the audit summary, page 14. I didn't need a parade, didn't need revenge. That quote alone was worth every sleepless night, every panicked Google search, every moment I'd questioned whether filing that complaint was a mistake. They hadn't just gotten caught. They'd confessed in writing years ago, and still did it anyway. The email came in at 6:07 a.m., subject line, "Operational restructuring and strategic adjustments." That's how they worded it. Like a polite obituary for a company choking on its own arrogance. The body of the email was bloated with corporate filler, difficult decisions, economic headwinds, position redundancies. But the message was simple. Norbridge was laying off over 60% of its staff, effective immediately. No severance mentioned, no Q&A scheduled, just a list of departments impacted by restructuring, followed by a bullet point breakdown of what to expect if your badge stopped working that day. HR didn't even have the guts to personalize it. It went out BCC. Word hit the floor like a dropped pallet. The office buzzed with panic. Desks cleared faster than I'd ever seen. Some people cried. Some didn't speak. One guy in freight scheduling flipped his chair and stormed out screaming, "I told you this place was a joke!" By 9 August, a second memo hit, this one about Todd. Effective immediately, Todd was stepping aside as CEO pending the outcome of internal compliance assessments. The phrase was so sterilized it could have been written in a lab. No apology, no explanation. Just a line at the bottom that said, "Leadership transition, updates to follow." From what I heard, Todd lost it. Blamed legal for not bearing the memos faster. Legal pointed the finger at HR for improperly managing the contractor files. HR threw it right back, citing direct orders from Todd's inbox. A perfect triangle of blame, all wrapped in policy jargon and NDAs. Meanwhile, I was 2 cities away, sitting in a modest little office with my name etched on the door. Compliance advisor, not flashy, not loud, but permanent. Mine. My new firm specialized in worker classification audits for mid-sized companies trying not to end up like Norbridge. Every day, I helped people do the thing Todd thought he was too clever to bother with. Follow the damn law. My phone buzzed with an envelope icon, a letter from the state. I opened it slowly, half expecting something cold and formulaic, but it was short. Just one line at the bottom, tucked under a thank you header. Your submission directly resulted in full enforcement action. Case closed. No fanfare, no certificate, just confirmation. I sat there for a long moment, letting that sink in. I didn't feel triumphant. This wasn't a victory parade, it was quieter, heavier, like a spine slowly realigning after years of carrying something crooked. Back at Norbridge, I wasn't mentioned in a single memo. No name, no credit, just silence. But the ones who mattered, they knew. Brittany from HR, Luis in the warehouse, even Allie in legal if she was honest with herself. They'd seen the emails, the timeline, the quotes. They didn't need a signature to know where it started. Some whispered, some nodded quietly when my name came up in side conversations. One guy, a former logistics lead, sent me a one-word message on LinkedIn. Respect. That was enough. I didn't need headlines, just correction. I didn't torch the company. I lit a match and pointed at the gas leak. They chose to strike it. The cafe was quiet that morning. Cold sun bleeding through dusty windows, the kind of pale November light that makes everything look a little more honest. I'd been coming here lately. Corner seat, black coffee, no cream, no distractions. Just me, my laptop, and a list of companies who didn't want to end up like Norbridge. I was halfway through outlining a policy audit template when my phone buzzed. Just a soft little ping, like a polite throat clear from the universe. Headline: Norbridge, freight files for Chapter 11 protection. I stared at it for a long moment. The same way you might look at a house you used to live in that's now just charred wood and yellow tape. No surprise, no shock, just confirmation. The final box checked. 30 seconds later, another buzz. This one from Luis. The warehouse is empty. It's over. I took a sip of my coffee. Still hot. Still bitter. Still mine. I typed one line back. Told them I wasn't a contractor. No emoji, no punctuation, just the truth. I watched the dots on the screen as he started to reply, then stopped. He didn't have to say anything. He knew. They all did. I closed my inbox, opened a folder on my desktop labeled Worker Reclassification Draft Guide. Inside were 4 docs, 2 spreadsheets, and a checklist template. By next week, it would be live. A downloadable toolkit for any employee out there too scared to ask if they were being legally screwed. Somewhere in a courtroom, Todd was probably sweating through another ill-fitted blazer, blaming his collapse on regulatory gray zones and bad legal advice. But the truth was simpler. You don't get to play fast and loose with people's lives and call it optimization. They gave me a 1099. I gave them a number 2. It just started with case file.